his country. But for quite some time now, especially within the last few months, especially with Secretary of State Marco Rubio taking a larger and larger role in the foreign policy towards Venezuela, there had been a sort of drumbeat in a way that the administration was hoping for to force Maduro from power. Of course, that was not the stated goal. The stated goal from the White House was that the administration was hoping to stop drugs, fentanyl, cocaine, from coming into the United States. However, even the Chief of Staff Susie Wiles in a recent interview acknowledged that one of the main purposes of these alleged drug boat strikes was to, quote, make Maduro cry uncle. And so given that backdrop, given that context, the world was watching to see what would be the next step in this military buildup. Already more than 100 people have been killed as part of those alleged drug boats.
Now we see the smoke in the background there. You have 3 locations. Confirmation on the strikes. Airport in Caracas has been hit. The port in Caracas has been hit. The military base has been hit.
Strikes in the Eastern Caribbean, in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific, and now we are awaiting word from the White House or the Pentagon, any confirmation on exactly what is transpiring here in Venezuela. So the latest we have is that government statement from Venezuela accusing the U.S. of being behind the explosions that you're seeing there on your screen. We have no confirmation of any injuries, no confirmation of the whereabouts of Nicolas Maduro, no indication what his government will do next, and no indication on what the president's President Trump's reaction might be to what transpired overnight. Corey.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, Gabe, how the fact that as the moments continue to pass, as we are reporting on this breaking news, the silence from the White House and the Pentagon gets louder and louder. No doubt they are keeping abreast of any updates. So we continue to wait to hear from our government. Let's go now to our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. Richard, what's the latest?
Ser blanco del poderío militar.
We're going to bring in Richard as soon as we get his signal up here in just a moment. But I want to. Oh, here we go. Hi, Richard. Take it away.
I'm sorry, I don't think you were hearing me. Yes, this is extraordinary details that are coming in. The report you had, the witness report in Caracas, as she was describing what she thought were low-flying aircraft or helicopters, explosions in multiple parts of the country. This can only be a coordinated strike. But the main question that I have at this moment is this just the beginning? Is this a message to Maduro and his inner circle, because apparently they had not been getting the message that the military base to deliver, or is this the start of a continuing campaign? And I think that will only become clear not by the statements from U.S. officials. Well, that will be an indication, but by what happens tonight, tomorrow. Will there be a follow-on military campaign? Because multiple coordinations, the sounds of helicopters and aircraft flying low, explosions are at and around military sites. That's a coordinated military strike. That is a regime change operation level, not counter-narcotics operation. We're still awaiting official confirmation, but if you look at all of the indications here, there are very few countries that have the ability to do this, that have the will to do this. This is an escalation, and the question I have at this moment is, will there be more strikes tonight, or was this I don't want to say one-off, because there's already been strikes on boats, and there's already been a land strike in a remote part of the country, but was this just one more escalatory step to try and convince the Maduro regime to leave power, or is this the start of a sustained military campaign to drive them from power?
This is a campaign.
Now, Richard, I have a question for you in response to your question, because I agree. I think that's what we're all wondering at this hour. My question to you is, because we have not heard from the White House or the Pentagon, is that in itself a response?
No, it's I don't want to say a holiday period in the middle of the night, but it is also a holiday period in the middle of the night, and I think they're trying to calibrate their response. And there are also countries mediating. I know several officials who are directly involved in this process. This is not happening in a vacuum. When there have been strikes carried out against the boats, there have also been negotiations. People have been, U.S. officials, through intermediaries, have been talking to the Maduro regime and made it clear that they want the Maduro regime, specifically President Maduro himself and his inner circle, to leave the country, to no longer be in power. And they believe, the Trump administration believes, and others believe, that the Maduro regime is not only illegitimate, that it is backed by Cuban intelligence, that it is tied to the drug trade. They have been designated narco-terrorists, and they want them out. So, going back to why we haven't heard a statement yet, it's also very likely that in addition to the public statements, there are back-channel conversations going on with intermediaries, with officials in the regime to calibrate their reaction. Did they get this message? Do there need to be more strikes? Is there a period of negotiations now? Maduro has said that he is open to talks, but he has also made it clear he has no intention at this stage of stepping down and leaving power. We will see if that calculation has now changed, or if those more significantly around him have changed their calculations, because dictators only last as long as they have control of primarily the military. If they lose control of the military and the security services, they generally lose control of the country as well. So I think we're going to, we will hear something quite soon, but I have no doubt they're trying to calibrate what message they're trying to send, and they're probably trying to get some initial assessments of what the response was, how the government itself is receiving this attack.
And of course, we are now getting a little bit of a trickle in of governments responding. The Cuban government also strongly denouncing these alleged strikes, as reported by Gabe Gutierrez. Richard, when it comes to the talk that happened back and forth, maybe not directly, but indirectly, between Nicolas Maduro and President Trump in the days leading up to this, on New Year's Day, for example, Nicolas Maduro saying that he was willing to negotiate to some degree, and then the United States saying that they felt that it wouldn't make much of a difference. This feels a little bit to me like a preamble leading up to the fact that these strikes may have been planned, and we're going to have moved forward no matter what.
Well, let's not forget how many American troops and how much military force has been moved to Latin America recently. We've all noticed the strikes on the boats. That's been the most obvious part of this campaign. And Gabe mentioned a short while ago that around 100 people have been killed in these strikes on small boats allegedly carrying narcotics destined for the United States. But strikes, lethal strikes on small boats, you don't need American aircraft carriers. You don't need thousands of troops that are stationed in the region, now for several months. That level of power is only needed to send a message to the military that the U.S. is serious and has the possibility for regime change, or to carry out strikes like the ones that we saw just a few hours ago. So there is a military...
Richard, thank you so much. I'm going to pause you here because I want to alert all of our stations to be on standby at this moment, because we are going to be heading to an NBC News special report. I want to alert our stations to be on standby at this moment. We're now going to an NBC News special report.
Come through.
This is an NBC News special report.
Good day to you. I'm Peter Alexander with this NBC News special report. We are coming on the air right now with breaking news out of Venezuela, where several explosions have rocked the capital city there of Caracas. That is according to multiple eyewitnesses that NBC News has spoken to over the last several hours. Those eyewitnesses sharing firsthand accounts of those explosions. The Venezuelan government, for its part, has accused the United States in a new statement from overnight of carrying out the military attacks, condemning the strikes as what it calls extremely serious military aggression. Neither the White House nor the Pentagon has issued any comment. We are out to both the White House and the Pentagon, as well as the State Department, for any information on this. And of course, we're monitoring Truth Social to hear if the President of the United States shares any comments as well. But notably, if the U.S. is behind these strikes, it would mark a major escalation from the United States military after the Trump administration's months-long pressure campaign on Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro's regime there. Maduro, someone that the United States has said is an illegitimate leader, the head of what the United States, U.S. Says is a narco-terrorist state. And of course, it follows a recent U.S. strike in Venezuela just before the end of the year, as well as we have been reporting for weeks and months now, those military strikes on boats in the region that the U.S. says have been carrying drugs throughout the region. Again, right now, you are looking at pictures into our newsroom of explosions in the capital city of Caracas, Venezuela. No statement from the United States so far, but the Venezuelan government is accusing this of being an extremely serious military aggression, a military attack from the United States. A series of my colleagues are up early as we begin the new year together right now with the very latest on all of it. I want to begin with NBC News' senior White House correspondent, my colleague Gabe Gutierrez, who has been up early detailing some of what we're seeing right now. Gabe, as we know, this comes after what have been weeks of threats and warnings and accusations by the United States. The president, only a matter of days ago, had said that Nicolas Maduro's days were numbered. If the U.S. is behind these strikes, it appears very clear that the U.S. is now amping up the pressure on the Venezuelan leader. Gabe?
Certainly. It's a dramatic escalation, it appears to be, Peter. And President Trump, just in the last few weeks, had been saying that he anticipated strikes inside Venezuela. Now, just within the past several days, the president acknowledged that there was at least one strike inside Venezuela, although the White House refused to provide many details on that. The president only saying earlier this week, confirming that the U.S. had struck some sort of dock area in an unspecified part of Venezuela, a place where he said that boats were being loaded up with drugs. And Peter, that is something that the White House, as you know, has been repeatedly saying throughout this entire campaign, that the focus here is targeting what it calls narco-terrorists and trying to prevent drugs like fentanyl and cocaine from reaching the United States. Of course, much of the fentanyl that reaches the U.S. is made in Mexico with precursor chemicals from China. But that does not stop the administration from making the argument that it is engaged with armed combatants, that it is labeled foreign terrorist organizations in and around Venezuela and in the Caribbean. Now, the administration over the past several months has carried out a series of strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean, in the Eastern Pacific, some as recently as this week. More than 100 people have been killed. But this, if it indeed turns out to be strikes by the U.S., this would be, of course, a dramatic escalation. Of course, we are awaiting any sort of reaction from either the President, the White House, the Pentagon. We have not heard from any of them. What we have heard, though, Peter, is quite a lot of reaction from several governments in the region. For example, you mentioned the government of Venezuela out with a statement condemning, denouncing this, what it calls serious military aggression perpetrated by the current government of the United States, and also calling this a flagrant violation of the United Nations Charter. The president of Colombia has also denounced these apparent strikes, so has the president of Cuba on social media within the past few hours. Now, this, as we understand it, these explosions began just before 2 o'clock local time in Venezuela. We have not received word of any injuries or any deaths as a result of these explosions, but as we're starting to get video from parts of Venezuela, you see dramatic images of fiery explosions inside the capital of Caracas. Now, I have spoken with a source, a Venezuelan analyst connected to the situation down there, who has been collecting some of these reports, and according to this source, there does seem to be multiple military facilities in Caracas that have been struck. Although this is very preliminary information, Peter, and it could change at any time as this situation unfolds. We are, of course, as I mentioned, awaiting any confirmation from the White House or from the Pentagon that it is the U.S. behind these apparent strikes. And so far, several governments in the region are blaming the explosions on the United States amid this escalating pressure campaign that the U.S. administration, that the Trump administration has been undertaking with Venezuela, Peter.
Gabe, stay with us for a second. Again, just to remind audiences, as we look at this right now, we are seeing those fiery explosions taking place in and around the capital city of Caracas in Venezuela right now. And much of that region has been bracing for the potential this might happen, given some of the president's words in recent days. We should note we also heard from the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, just a matter of hours ago in the last couple of days, where he said that he was open and negotiating with Washington, with the president, to combat drug trafficking, and what was really the first sign, perhaps, that this sustained U.S. pressure campaign was beginning to take its toll in some form on this embattled South American leader at the time. Maduro said in an interview that was recorded and aired with a South American, a Spanish journalist, he said the U.S. government knows because we have told many of their spokespeople that if they want to seriously discuss an agreement to combat drug trafficking, we are ready. The president, as you may remember in recent days, before we saw that strike that took place at a docking facility along Venezuela's shoreline last month, media reports suggested it was carried out by the CIA. The CIA has declined to comment to me and to my colleagues in a series of its public statements so far. But we know that the president did say publicly in advance of that the U.S. had knocked out a facility tied to Venezuela. In his words, he said it was a big plant or facility where, among other things, he said the ships come from. He said, in the president's words, that we hit them very hard, but clearly this would be a much harder strike were it to be the United States behind it right now. We should note we do not have any reason to believe that there will be any public acknowledgement from the U.S. so far. As with other strikes that have taken place around the world, including those in Iran and elsewhere, it's often a matter of hours or even days before the U.S. would confirm such a thing. Gabe, as you stay with us here, I'm struck by a couple of things. One, obviously, among the questions we're asking right now, if this was the U.S., was the Senate Armed Services Committee notified of any strikes that would be have taken place there? There's obviously been some criticism from Democrats, even some Republicans, that they have not been brought into this process, that in effect the White House has been working unilaterally here already at this early hour as we try to get more details. There are accusations from Democrats against the Trump administration. We heard from one of former President Obama's deputy national security advisors, one of his heads of strategic planning there, Ben Rhodes, a moment ago, effectively saying that a regime change war in Latin America based on absurd rationales about drug trafficking, no explanation of goals, and counter to everything Trump promised, campaigning. That's the way he has framed it. So you can see how the criticism is already beginning before there's even confirmation of what this may be right now. But let's focus in the moment again with those strikes right here, Gabe. And the president has had a series of meetings, we know, over recent weeks with some of his top advisors. We know they've been focused on a series of military situations, most notably what's been taking place between Russia and Ukraine. But Gabe, update us on the conversations, the meeting.
Okay, let's pause it right there, y'all. Hey, I got some live footage, or well, not live, but I got some pictures to show y'all of the bombing right here. This is in Caracas. That's the my bad, y'all. That's the 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 that's one bombing we seen on the video. I believe this is the military depot. I believe. Here's another video of the bombing. Also, this is, I believe, communication. I know of 10 so far strikes that I've just seen on the video so far. It's I think they're gonna go bomb them and like go give them like, hey, look, are you ready to leave now? Or you want more? You know what I mean? Like we can come back and get it if you want, but I think it was just a show of force to show him like, hey, look, get your fake, behind up out of here, and let somebody take over. That's supposed to be in power. Now somebody gonna sit there and try to be a bully because of a female. But anyways,
between Iran and Israel, and Venezuela also has come up just within the past several days as he's been spending the holidays at his Mar-a-Lago estate in South Florida. Now, the president has been meeting with his national security team for quite some time, and over the past several months, regarding Venezuela, the driver of this policy, the foreign policy towards Venezuela, has certainly been Secretary of State Marco Rubio, also the acting national security advisor, as well as Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, of course, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, involved in all of these discussions as well. And you recall, Peter, that it's just a short time ago, a couple of weeks ago, that in a Vanity Fair interview with Susie Wiles, the Chief of Staff, made a very candid assessment of the administration's goals in Venezuela, while they have publicly been saying that stopping drugs from entering the U.S. is the main goal and combating narco-traffickers. Susie Wiles saying in that interview that one of the main goals of attacking these alleged drug boats was to make Maduro cry uncle. And certainly Secretary of State Rubio has made no secret throughout his political career of wanting regime change in Venezuela, a government that the administration views as illegitimate, that says that it won the last election, but has been denounced by much of the world, which views the Maduro government as illegitimate. So there is still a lot of criticism, certainly not just from Democrats, but some skeptical Republicans who, as you mentioned, Peter, the administration has gone around Congress when it comes to these engagements with Venezuela. And there's certainly a lot of questions within the past few days. If there were strikes inside Venezuela, would that amount essentially to a declaration of war? And you spoke about that earlier strike inside the country that the president acknowledged, that the CI declined to comment. If this does end up being strikes conducted by the U.S., and again, we don't have confirmation of that, but if it is, how will Congress react? And will there be more outrage, not just among Democrats, but again, among Republicans who may not have been notified of this? Even though President Trump has said that strikes inside Venezuela were coming, so this may not be entirely unexpected. Perhaps the scope of it, if it does end up being the United States, certainly is raising a lot of eyebrows. Right now, we have not heard from the White House, have not heard from the Pentagon, and we have not heard directly from Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro. We have heard a statement from his government, but Maduro himself, we are not sure of his whereabouts at this hour either, Peter.
Gabe, I want to give you a moment to try to reach out to some of your sources, even at this early hour, just 4 o'clock, 4:15 almost in the morning, East Coast time, an hour ahead there in Caracas, Venezuela, which means in the course of the next hour or so, it'll finally become dawn, daylight, which will give us a better sense of what destruction, what damage, what attacks may have taken place there so far. Again, to confirm, we don't know specifically that the U.S. is behind it, but that is the accusation being made by the Venezuelan government at this time. I want to bring in our colleague, our chief foreign correspondent is Richard Engel. He's also joining us on the phone right now. And Richard, for the first time, we are getting some information from the U.S. government, not specific to these attacks, but perhaps responding to them. This is from the U.S. Embassy in Bogota that says it is aware of these reports of explosions in and around Caracas, Venezuela. They are warning U.S. citizens not to travel to Venezuela. They say citizens, American citizens who are in Venezuela right now should shelter in place. What it calls its highest travel advisory level, a level 4 right now. So that's the first sort of acknowledgement that this is taking place from the U.S. government in some form, though it's still unclear whether the U.S. is behind what we're seeing right now. You have been in that region in recent months. I just want to get your sense as we witness this right now taking place on the ground there in and around Caracas, the capital city.
Peter, good to join you. Happy New Year. It looks like Venezuela is going to be a story that is going to be dominating this new year. As you mentioned a short while ago, the U.S. hasn't acknowledged that it was behind it, no official confirmation, but there are only certain countries in the world that could carry out coordinated strikes in a foreign country of this kind of scale, or who would have that interest. And the United States has certainly indicated that President Maduro is a target. Gabe Gutierrez had two phrases that I think are worth noting a short while ago. He said that the point of the military pressure on Venezuela that we've been seeing now is to get Nicolas Maduro, the dictator who runs the country, to cry uncle. Well, so far he has not been crying uncle. There have been strikes against boats, allegedly carrying drugs, killing upwards of 100 people that have been denounced by not long ago. He had suspended intelligence cooperation with the United States because of those strikes. Then, as you mentioned, right around the New Year, just before, about 2 weeks before the New Year, there was this mysterious land strike in Venezuela. Now, this strike, which witnesses in Venezuela say took place in multiple locations, military facilities in Caracas. Witnesses describe hearing low-flying aircraft, what sounded like helicopters, hearing very, very loud explosions, and not only in Caracas. So what it appears that we saw over the last few hours was a coordinated, sophisticated military strike, primarily targeting military facilities, very likely carried out by the United States, although we don't have that officially confirmed at this stage. We'll see if that confirmation comes shortly or if it never comes. But the goal, as it has been described to me by mediators directly involved in this process, is to not only to get Nicolas Maduro to cry uncle, but to leave power. A regime change style pressure campaign directed against him, and more specifically directed against his inner circle, because Maduro is in power. He is backed by, according to these mediators, by Cuban intelligence. He is backed by his military inner circle. He is backed by a circle of elite business and military leaders, because there is quite a bit of crossover in the country. So under the guise of a counter-narcotics operation, we're seeing an escalating regime change operation to get rid of Maduro. But so far, it has been unsuccessful. So the big question I have, Peter, this morning as we start this new year, is this one more notch, one more escalation to try and get him to cry uncle, or are we seeing right now the start of an extended regime change style operation, which could be a very slippery slope? I have heard no indication that the U.S. has any intention of sending troops into the country or boots on the ground, but there are a lot of troops on land and at sea around Venezuela, and they
Richard,
have been there for a considerable amount of time.
That's what I want to ask you about specifically. Let's talk a little bit about the building footprint, the American military footprint in that region. The U.S. have